On this Sunday night, the UK variant reaches every province. The coronavirus mutation that is more infectious and potentially more deadly.
It will very soon become the dominant virus in Canada.
Plus an outbreak in an Ontario community linked to the South African variant. No laughing matter. The Supreme Court weighs in on a Canadian comedian's joke about a disabled boy. Plus, high-tech commerce. Will Canadian banks put digital currency into your wallet? And the discovery of a 5,000-year-old brewery and its role in ancient Egypt.
Global National with Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Health officials in every province have confirmed cases of the highly transmissible COVID-19 variant first discovered in the United Kingdom. There are also cases involving variants from South Africa, Brazil, and Nigeria. As David Akin reports, there are concerns about their spread as some provinces push ahead with easing restrictions.
In the national capital, skaters on the Rideau Canal are out in force on a Valentine's Sunday, ready for COVID-19 restrictions to be lifted here and in some parts of Ontario on Tuesday. In Manitoba, some of those restrictions loosened this weekend. Gyms and restaurants now open to 25% capacity, and yet health experts are worried that premiers are moving too quickly.
You can't cheat laws of nature through wishful thinking, and that is unfortunately what Doug Ford, Brian Pallister, and others, Jason Kenney, are trying to do.
In North Bay, Ontario, public health officials say they've confirmed their first case of the COVID-19 variant first found in South Africa. That's a variant for which current vaccines are not as effective. It has also been found in other Ontario communities and in BC.
Now, imagine something less controllable with vaccines that is also more aggressive at jumping from person to person and perhaps more deadly when it does jump. And you can see this is not a good track to be on.
In the meantime, the B.1.1.7 variant, that's the one first discovered in the UK, has been found in all 10 provinces. Researchers say it may be up to 70% more infectious and is more lethal.
It will very soon, in a matter of weeks or at most, say a month and a half, become the dominant virus in Canada.
And that, in turn, has put even more pressure on Canada's vaccination program. Manitoba was so concerned about the federal government's vaccine rollout performance, it decided last week to buy directly from a Calgary manufacturer that may have vaccines ready by the end of the year, but only after it says it was turned down by manufacturers with already approved vaccines.
We have tried Pfizer, we've tried Moderna, I could go down the list, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, and so on and so forth. They are not allowed by their deal with the federal government to sell to the provinces.
The premiers and the prime minister are expected to meet via teleconference later this week, and domestic vaccine production capacity is almost sure to top the agenda. David Akin, Global News, Ottawa.
There are worries a new cluster of COVID-19 cases on a Manitoba First Nation could be the variant first identified in the UK. 7 probable cases have been detected on the Pongassi First Nation in eastern Manitoba. The community has been under a strict lockdown since February 2nd. Last weekend, the Canadian Armed Forces deployed more than a dozen personnel to provide support. Samples have been sent to the National Microbiology Lab for genomic sequencing to confirm whether the cases are in fact the more contagious UK strain. The UK has reached a significant milestone in its COVID-19 vaccination program. More than 15 million of the country's most vulnerable people have received the first dose of the vaccine. The government reached its target a day early and less than 10 weeks after the first shot was administered. Roughly 22% of Britain's population has been given at least one shot. The vaccine rollout is now being expanded to other groups. Starting tomorrow, new measures come into effect in Britain. UK nationals coming from 33 red list countries will have to quarantine in a government-approved hotel. The stay will cost the traveler thousands of dollars. They'll also be forced to cover the costs of 2 COVID-19 tests. As our Europe Bureau Chief Crystal Goomansingh explains, anyone caught breaking the new rules could face jail time.
This is a sample room I'm going to take you into now.
It's no luxury suite, but you will get a yoga mat in your room at this government-designated quarantine hotel.
The most important thing is the virus killer, which is a machine which is running 24/7, is sucking up the air and cleaning the air and killing any germs.
New restrictions are being imposed on British nationals landing in England from 33 countries, mostly in South America and Africa. Portugal is the only European location on the government's red list. Other travelers from COVID-19 hotspots were previously banned.
When they arrive, they'll be escorted to a designated hotel, which will be closed to guests who aren't quarantining for 10 days or for longer if they test positive for COVID-19 during their stay.
The Health Secretary detailed the government's new strategy in Parliament this past week. UK media reports, however, outlined concerns from the Immigration Services Union, saying its members were still unclear on their role. Travelers who don't comply could be hit with huge fines and the possibility of up to 10 years behind bars.
We'll be backing this new system with strong enforcement of both home quarantine and hotel quarantine. People who flout these rules are putting us all at risk.
England has been in lockdown since mid-December, the third so far in this pandemic. Infection rates, hospitalizations, and deaths are steadily declining, but virus variants pose an increased threat.
In the first wave, 0.1% of cases came from China, where we had restrictions. 62% came from France and from Spain, where we didn't have restrictions. And there's every reason to think that the variant will behave in the same way.
From Monday, positive COVID-19 tests from travelers will be sent for genomic sequencing, a move that will allow health officials to watch for new mutations and give other nations a heads up on what could be coming to their shores. Crystal Goomansingh, Global News, London.
New Zealand's largest city has been ordered into a new 3-day lockdown. Starting tonight, Auckland's 1.7 million residents have to stay at home other than for essential work and groceries. That's after 3 cases of the UK variant of COVID-19 were identified. New Zealand has won widespread praise for its handling of the pandemic, going months without community transmission. The country has recorded just over 2,000 cases and 25 deaths. The spread of another deadly virus is raising concerns in West Africa. The World Health Organization has declared an Ebola outbreak in Guinea, where at least 7 people tested positive for the virus. 3 of them died. It's the first time Ebola has been detected in the country since 2016, at the end of the deadliest outbreak in history. That epidemic began in Guinea and claimed the lives of more than 11,000 people across 3 countries. Tomorrow, the Supreme Court of Canada is set to hear a case that pits a Quebec comedian against the subject of one of his jokes. Stand-up comic Mike Ward made fun of a boy who lives with a rare genetic disorder. His family then filed a complaint with the Human Rights Tribunal, and it ruled against Ward. He's fought that ruling all the way to the highest court in the country. Mike Armstrong has a look at the arguments and what's at stake.
This is comic Mike Ward telling the joke that landed him in court. He told it during shows between 2010 and 2013. It was about a boy with a disfigurement, Jérémy Gabriel, singing for the Pope, supposedly because he was terminally ill, and then Ward basically being disappointed because he didn't die. Now, Gabriel has Treacher-Collins syndrome. It's a genetic disorder that can cause deformities. In 2012, Gabriel and his parents filed a complaint with the Quebec Human Rights Commission and eventually the Human Rights Tribunal and won. Ward was ordered to pay $35,000 in damages to Gabriel and $7,000 to his parents. It found the comments discriminatory and that they infringed on Gabriel's right to equality. In 2019, Ward fought the judgment in appeals court. It threw out the $7,000 for the parents, but upheld the $35,000 in damages for Gabriel.
There was a lack of judgment in his jokes.
Gabriel has argued Ward's jokes affected him, made his life more difficult than it already was. He was only 13 at the time and struggling with his challenges. He even considered suicide.
What I do is dark humor. Like, I'm not Ray Romano, right?
Ward talked about the judgment on the Joe Rogan podcast, saying the courts shouldn't be judging what's funny and what's not.
But I was making fun of the fact that he had become famous because everyone thought he was dying, and then he didn't die. which is good for him.
It's a dark joke. That's all it is.
There has been support for Ward from other comics. The idea of courts ruling on comedy, some say, could put a chill on all artists.
Now what's going to happen is, because of this precedent, a lot of comedians are going to be, and a lot of TV shows and a lot of film writers are going to say, well, I'm not sure I can say this anymore.
Now, neither side has been willing to back down throughout this entire ordeal. It will be heard by the Supreme Court Monday, having now stretched close to a decade since it started. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have a little something extra to celebrate this Valentine's Day. A spokesperson for Meghan and Harry confirms they're expecting their second child later this year. A photo of the couple was released today. It shows Meghan cradling her bump. The new baby will be 8th in line to the British throne. Last year, the Duke and Duchess stepped back as senior royals and moved to California. Coming up, the rumble in the Rockies. An earthquake strikes a popular resort town. People in Banff, Alberta were jolted by a small earthquake last night.
Whatever color that you're doing. Did you guys hear that?
The shake came as a shock to this online art class, but there was no damage in the resort town, which is in the heart of the Rocky Mountains. Natural Resources Canada reported the 3.9 magnitude quake struck around 6:30 p.m. local time. The epicenter was about 6 kilometers north of Banff. The tremors were also felt in Canmore, which is about 26 kilometers away.
It's a decent earthquake for that area. There's a couple earthquakes a year along the Rocky Mountains, and this is not unusual to have an earthquake, but it certainly is a bit larger.
In the U.S., ice, snow, and cold temperatures are stretching from Washington State to Washington, D.C. Near Seattle, the snowfall has created a slick situation on the roads. More than 200 crashes have been reported in the region. And parts of the American Deep South are in a deep freeze right now. As you can see, some roads and sidewalks are completely iced over. A day after former U.S. President Donald Trump was acquitted in his second impeachment trial, the battle may not be over. 7 Republican senators broke ranks to try and convict Trump of inciting the January 6th Capitol riot. Despite the not guilty verdict, the GOP is at a crossroads with its own political future. Here's Jennifer Johnson.
One day after former President Donald Trump was acquitted on charges of inciting an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, the nation's top Republican says this could be just the beginning of Trump's problems, suggesting he may now face criminal charges.
President Trump is still liable for everything he did while he was in office. Didn't get away with anything yet.
McConnell didn't vote to convict the former president. Only 7 Republicans did, along with 50 Democrats. 17 were needed to reach the 2/3 majority. Those who voted to convict say the Republican Party is now at a crossroads to keep standing behind Trump or forge a new path.
I think as force wanes, the Republican Party is more than just one person.
Many Democrats say even without a conviction, the trial has done lasting damage to the former president.
Those memories and those police officers' screams will be forever etched in the memories of Americans. He is done.
But claiming victory, there are now calls from the Republican National Committee for more fundraising. After the verdict, Trump wrote to supporters saying, "I look forward to continuing our incredible journey together." But Democrats are claiming victory too, after the most bipartisan impeachment vote in U.S. history.
57 senators, including 7 Republicans, that chose country over party, considered the evidence, and reached the same conclusion we did, which was that the president incited insurrection.
With the trial over, both sides will now refocus on a country still reeling from the COVID-19 pandemic, millions still out of work, and millions more still unable to get vaccinated to protect themselves from a virus that has killed over 475,000 Americans. Already the variant that originated in the UK has reached 39 states and continues to spread.
Early data have demonstrated that it is around 40 to 50% more transmissible. Already that means we're likely to have more cases and more deaths from this.
Democrats are anxious to get back to work on President Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief package, saying they will pass the plan to help struggling Americans with or without Republican support. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
Still ahead, the future of finance. Is Canada ready for a digital loonie? Imagine a digital loonie becoming legal tender. Well, that day is getting closer. A recent survey found most major banks are considering some form of digital currency within the next 6 years. 3 research teams have produced proposals for the Bank of Canada. As Eric Sorensen reports, this could fuel the digital economy.
Every day, more Canadians pay digitally, and fewer businesses need this: a cash drawer stuffed with bills. Canadians are among the most cash-free spenders in the world. So, is it time for digital currency? The Bank of Canada isn't promoting the idea, but believes it needs to be ready.
Currency is a core part of the Bank of Canada's mandate. For several years, the Bank of Canada has been analyzing what circumstances might lead Canada to decide to issue a digital currency.
The Bank of Canada is now studying proposals from 3 sets of university experts for a homegrown digital currency. Formulas for how to spend with the anonymity of cash without using cash. It could work like this. Through an app on a cell phone, a user sets up a secure e-wallet. It's authenticated through a government agency, and it's ready to go. The merchant establishes a digital transaction to accept the funds. But a critical new step in between, what the U of T and York team calls a whitelist, where the transaction is not only authenticated, but will ensure customer information is not passed on, just the money. Privacy is paramount.
We believe that the Canadian government has an obligation to give people a way to protect their privacy and give them, in particular, because payments are so central for commercial interactions.
The currency would require measures against too much privacy to prevent money laundering and tax evasion. And while cash payments are becoming a smaller part of the economy, the central bank says it wouldn't abandon communities not connected to high-tech commerce.
That means, for one thing, ensuring that remote and marginalized communities are not left out of any new way to pay for goods and services.
The so-called CBDC wouldn't be a direct counter to Bitcoin, which is an investment currency, rather than a cash-equivalent consumer currency. But Canada cannot sit back, say experts, as other countries like China unveil digital currencies and private enterprise cryptocurrencies such as Facebook's DM are developed.
It's a matter of national sovereignty. So I don't think the Bank of Canada or any central bank for that matter would like to outsource this process to a third party, even if it is a domestic party, let alone a foreign one.
Only a central bank can guarantee complete safety and universal access, and with public interest, not profits, as a top priority.
Digital currency won't be issued before Canadians and Ottawa want it, but when they do, the Bank of Canada wants to be ready to roll it out. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
Beer lovers and historians, pay attention. Archaeologists in Egypt have discovered what could be one of the world's oldest breweries. The 5,000-year-old beer factory was unearthed in the ancient city of Abydos near the Nile River. Several units were found housing dozens of pottery basins used to heat grains and water to produce beer. It wasn't exactly for good times, though. Evidence suggests the beer was used for royal burial rites. Up next, a carousel in Estonia made with some cold creativity. A nice carousel in Estonia is enticing people to get outdoors for Valentine's Day and feel the love. A local man is behind the design. He cut into the thick ice to create the 12-meter circle and attached a boat engine to get it to rotate. He says he simply wanted something to keep his grandchildren entertained. And some days he takes his laptop out on the ice to do some work. That's right, it's Valentine's Day. For some, it's a Hallmark holiday. For others, it's a time of romance. But this is no time to spread the love, being in a pandemic. So we turn to Stuart Reynolds, known online as Brittlestar, to talk about love connections in the age of Wi-Fi and Zoom dates.
Romance and technology always find a way to hook up. I remember back in 1993, a woman I worked with went to meet a man she had met on the internet. The internet in the early 90s. No uploaded pictures in those days. While I was using the internet for what it was intended, looking up the lyrics to Informer by Snow, They probably just sent dirty emoticons back and forth. Or ASCII nudes. You know, like typewriter art that just uses letters and punctuation to make a picture? What are all those commas? Ooh. Total weirdos. Why couldn't they just meet in a bar and find out if they're compatible by partaking in a little lip-lock roulette? That's where you open-mouth kiss a stranger and you don't know what you're going to get. But how things have changed. These days, I can't imagine even agreeing to meet with anyone without Googling them first, let alone a potential romantic partner. Yeah, if we're going to be intimate and vulnerable with each other, I'm going to need to know the last 4 places you worked, and I will be thoroughly scouring your social media for incriminating posts. Even though we can't get together in person that easily currently, I would think that it's actually better the way it is these days. Date going terribly? Close your laptop. Person turns out to be a creep? Boom, blocked. And with physical distance no longer playing a role, I think you can slowly get to know someone without panicking that they're about to suddenly turn the lights up after last call. Romance is difficult though, and it always has been, a roll of the dice. These days, it just happens to also be a chance click or a swipe. These days, love should be in the air. You know, like Wi-Fi. Once only in certain places, but now available pretty much everywhere.
And that is Global National for this Sunday. I'm Robin Gill. We leave you tonight with a birthday wish for a woman who served a long time in politics.
I never expected to be recognized on my 100th birthday.
People in Mississauga, Ontario did a surprise birthday drive-by to greet Hazel McCallion on her 100th birthday. Nicknamed Hurricane Hazel and known for being direct and outspoken, she served as mayor of Mississauga for 36 years before stepping down in 2014. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.